Hi guys, a very good evening to everybody here. We're back with yet another podcast session presented to you by SportsKhabri. We're talking about Arsenal and Manchester City today. Manchester City had the better of Arsenal when they came to the Emirates and beat the Gunners 3 goals to 1. But the title race is wide open. Arsenal, of course, are at the top spot right now. Manchester City could obviously leapfrog Arsenal and take the title. Manchester United are not too far behind either, and we could see a possible resurgence from this United side. But right now, let's focus on Arsenal and Manchester City. We'll take up Arsenal first because it's been a fine season for the young Gunners, and they've really got something going here. And the team vibe, as such, is something that a lot of people are commenting, and they want to be a part of this amazing youth project. Rahul, I'll start with you because you're the Arsenal fan here, and how are you feeling at this point in the season? We're past the halfway mark and Arsenal are on top.
Well, as an Arsenal fan, obviously I'm expecting because, if you would have asked me at the start of the season, if even in the Wonder team, I would have picked Arsenal to be in the title race come match week 25 or 26, I would have said no. So, I was confident that we would challenge for the top four places, maybe comfortably finish third. But no, I didn't expect Arsenal to, challenge City and go with them thus far into the season. And yeah, look, the signs here obviously they're although we missed out on the Champions League places last season with a bad run of results. And obviously it was partly due to our very small squad as well as the moves, and we can Arteta's reluctance look at good fixes, so that costly last season. But but the signings that we made this the last summer window and the pre-season that we had, it was looking like this will be a very good season. But yeah, most of them, including Mikel Arteta, have even really exceeded my expectations. So yeah, as an Arsenal fan, I'm really happy.
Well, considering the signings that Arsenal made in the summer, did you expect Arsenal to go toe-to-toe with Manchester City, or was it a sort of a surprise when you're like, oh my God, this team really got going and they're at it?
I feel like in terms of the performance, they've been getting better every season. In fact, even last season when we faced Arsenal in both the fixtures, they played, I would say, honestly, they played a little better than us. Although we did, Rodri scored the winner in one of those games and we won the game. And I think there was a red card in one of them. So I feel like if it wasn't for those circumstances, Arsenal definitely were the better team in the last two fixtures in the last season. So I have seen that Arsenal have progressed quite a bit over the seasons. Arteta has clearly figured out a way to make this team function. And obviously, I did not expect the likes of Xhaka and Partey to have this kind of resurgence in the Premier League. And they've absolutely killed it in the midfield. Their players, of course, like Bukayo Saka are the star signings that they've been around for a really long time. But players like Odegaard have picked up quite a bit as well. So in short, what I'm trying to say is that this is a team that has been growing over the last couple of seasons. And if there were any particular signings, it was only to strengthen this squad to a certain extent and ensure that the key players that are in the squad have their backups as well. Like Jorginho, for example, in the Jan transfer window was a very smart signing. Arteta has mentioned on numerous occasions that he was a big fan of Jorginho. In fact, when Jorginho was being considered for City as well, Arteta was with Pep at the time. So I'm sure that Pep and Arteta both like Jorginho to a certain extent, until obviously he decided to go to Chelsea and that happened. But he's been a fan for a number of years now. So just getting Jorginho in the squad to have a good balance in the midfield in case of an injury to replace the likes of Partey I think it's just brilliant. I think they've been very smart in what they've been doing. Of course, in the beginning, they had a lot of problems because the cohesion and the synergy between the chemistry between the players wasn't there as much. But clearly, Arteta's fine-tuned that. And so I was, of course, a little bit nervous about the fact that that this is a team that is getting better and better, especially because of the performances against City, particularly last season. But I certainly did not expect them to compete for the title and definitely be above City in this position of the year. So it did take me by surprise, but I have to give them credit for whatever they've done so far. They've been extremely smart. They've been efficient in the way they've gone around doing every bit of business in every part of the team. They've focused really well and they've just mastered it.
When up, Nihal, I think you brought up two important points, one of which we'll talk about later, which is Jorginho or the Thomas Partey conversation. Another person that I wanted to talk about was Granit Xhaka. Anshuman, Xhaka's played a little more progressive this season. He's been given license to get forward. He often makes those runs down the left side of the field, helping out in attack, finds himself in the box at times, gets himself into decent shooting positions. Did you see this change coming at all? Did you think it was a player who was dead? And so what are your thoughts about Xhaka and this new role in this Arsenal side? And how important is he to the current Arsenal setup?
In terms of whether he could play as a wide midfielder, yes. Because when he was playing for Gladbach, the roles that he used to occupy, he used to play as a wide player in that time as well. And so that tendency that he had, operating of the wide spaces, he has always had that in him. But for better or worse, Xhaka's time in the Premier League has always been remembered for him being a bit of a character and losing his temper on most of the occasions. And when a couple of years ago we had that moment where he threw the Arsenal shirt on the ground and just completely the fans had giving him the stick. In many cases, that would have been it for any player. But for all the credit that Arteta deserves for working with this team the way he has, one of the biggest things that needs to be kept in mind is the way that he has rejuvenated Xhaka's career, because taking the captaincy off him again would have been a very big psychological hit as far as Xhaka is concerned himself. But to be able to get a leader in him, despite making not having captain him anymore, I think Arteta deserves a lot of credit for that, because that is simply in general a credit that Arteta needs to get the way he has handled the squad. Because in many cases, you could say that the way he handled the Aubameyang situation as well. You could have said that, okay, at some point players would have given up on him, players would have started turning to downing tools. They didn't do that. And Arteta needs to be given credit for the way he has kept the squad with him. And Xhaka is a great example for that, because in multiple situations it could have been said that a manager could have been excused for just wanting him to get out the door. It did not happen. He stuck with him, and he was able to bring the leader in him despite taking the armband off him, which I think is one of the most significant things that he could do. Because we see quite a lot of players throughout the Premier League. It's not just the Premier League, throughout football in general, who are considered to be leaders but aren't exactly the kind of leaders you would want to give an armband to. From a Manchester United perspective, I would say Paul Pogba for a long time has been that kind of a player. Everyone was like, just make a team around him, make him the centerpiece, and that's never quite the player he ever was. So separate discussion, but yeah, just an example as to how there are different kinds of players and there are different interpretations of what a leader can be, in what context a leader can perform. And for Arteta to be able to bring this kind of renaissance essentially out of Xhaka in this Arsenal setup is quite important. Did I see it happening in this Arsenal setup? I did not see it happening unless Zinchenko arrived, because his arrival on the left back position, I think, is a lot more. That's something that needs to be given a lot more credence, because in the left back situation, Kieran Tierney, as good as he is, as likable as he is, he has had his injury issues. So reliability has been a bit of a challenge. But the kind of repertoire Zinchenko has, the kind of ability he has, the seamlessness with which he moves from wide into the central midfield, supporting Thomas Partey in the build-up,
allowing Saka to go not just front but out wide and supporting Martinelli in those runs. It was something that the positional switching and interpersonal relationships in that side of the final third is something that we see both on the left and right. In the left, we have that in Saka, in Martinelli, and in the right, we have that with Saka and Odegaard, and the way they link up the play. So again, Arteta deserves a lot of credit for that. And the kind of acquisitions that they have made, Arsenal, starting in the summer transfer window, leading up to the Jorginho acquisition, they have been quite commendable. And to that end, I'll say read up Saha's pieces that he has written on Arsenal over the last 2 seasons, because a lot of people would have given up on Arteta, and most of the Arsenal fan base, even going into the end of last season, were like, okay, Arteta needs to go because this isn't going anywhere. But as someone who has edited Saha's work, I can guarantee you he could see this coming. And he knew that one of the subtitles of his pieces were something special is growing up at Arsenal. And while no one else was willing to acknowledge that Saha was there, he was pointing all of this out, that both Edu and Arteta have incredible talent identification. And if they are given time, which is usually not the precedence here, if they are allowed the time, they will be able to bring something with this Arsenal team. And he has been proven right, because they have been given time. There is an argument to be made that maybe they would not have been given time if in the 2020-21 season, the fans were inside the stadium, maybe they would have forced the vote to take some action on Arteta. But that is a different debate, whether it's a what-if situation. For better or worse, they were given time, and in time, they have come good. And I think for Arsenal fans in general, it's important to remember that even if they don't end up winning the title this season, this has been a resounding success, because the performance that Arsenal have made, not just in the technical aspect, but also in the temperament aspect, the way they have made themselves go about the pitch, the way they have come back in massive matches after going down, all of it's incredibly commendable work. So credit where credit's due. Arteta and Erik both have done great job with this Arsenal side. And I, for one, personally would like to see Arsenal win, because I just want Manchester City to not win. I just want different winners in a season every once in a while. So that's my. I would absolutely like Arsenal to win the league after all these years. I think they deserve to. They have been quite good as well. So yeah, but it's just important to keep in mind that they have been great this season, whether or not the season ends in a trophy or not.
Kaustubh, Anshuman mentioned a couple of really important points. Of course, talking about Zinchenko, and one excellent player. He's one of the best technical players at the club right now. He picks up balls in tight areas and really bails Arsenal out of a lot of tight situations when they're playing out of the back. Was he at all underrated for you in the Premier League? Should he have gotten far more minutes than he did at Manchester City? And another thing that I've personally seen is that he is a natural leader. Comes off very well in front of all these youngsters at the club. What is your take on Zinchenko?
I think Zinchenko is someone who can drive these subjective opinions. So, I mean, for me, he was never underrated, because if you look at the way Guardiola's teams have played at his previous clubs, be it Bayern Munich or Barcelona, he had these players who could break lines in terms of their movement or in terms of their passing, and Zinchenko was excellent at that. And you could see at Bayern Munich, especially at Bayern Munich, where Pep learned the art of building with the back three. Or, I mean, the idea of having numerical advantage in midfield was obviously pretty much there at Barcelona. But the idea of building up with an extra man at the back was slightly newer to him at Bayern Munich, which is what Zinchenko offered. And he also offered that ability to have that numerical advantage in midfield, which is something at Barcelona, I think only the defenders aren't using their ability to, carry the ball forward, especially Gerard Piqué. I mean, Puyol sort of did that role, but he was more about passing the ball forward. So I think over time, Pep's the very role of Pep's players has changed. And I think Zinchenko sort of embodied that modification in terms of how Pep has evolved as a manager as well. Because even if you look at how Zinchenko plays today, it's about, since we know that Arteta is a very much a student of Guardiola's, we look at how Arsenal like to build with three, and they want Zinchenko to create that numerical advantage in midfield, play alongside Thomas Partey, or if Granit Xhaka is also in that midfield. So I think he is essentially a very modern day defender, or even if we want to call him a midfield, I think it will be a very fair argument to
say that, because I think you can't find a lot of players of that type, which is why there was a point when I was a massive Daily Blind fan as well. There was a point when I wanted Daily Blind to play under Pep Guardiola at one point, and I'm quite glad that he's actually at Bayern Munich now, who uh, which is a former Pep Guardiola club, and they have sort of a similar idea. But I think you don't often see players of Zinchenko's type. I think at Bayern Munich, Pep did have Philipp Lahm there, and having read a lot of stuff about Pep and that time at Bayern Munich, it was after the point where I think it was when a lot of early in the season in Pep's first campaign at Bayern Munich, a lot of Pep's midfielders were out injured. I think it was his second month, and Pep realized that since Lam comes off as quite a decent, I think more than a decent technical player, someone who understands the system as a whole, why not play him in midfield? And it worked out quite well. And I think from there on, he's had this tendency to move his fullbacks into central area. I think when Joao Cancelo was at Manchester City again under Pep Guardiola, he offered something different. Whereas Zinchenko was someone when Pep realized that there was a need to be much more, fluid in possession while putting up from the back instead of having someone who stretches the opposition defense. I think that's when Zinchenko came in to be a really important player. I think I want Arsenal to win the Premier League. And I think if Arsenal are to win the Premier League, I think Zinchenko is going to be a very massive part of it, because I think Anshuman mentioned, I watched Erik a fair bit during this time at Celtic as well. I mean, and I'm a massive fan of him because he was a Celtic captain. I like Celtic as a club as well. But apart from his injuries, he's not someone who drops into midfield and plays those passes into the pockets of space, into the midfield, into the areas that Odegaard operates in usually. So I think that's a flaw that Tierney has. And I think when it comes to Tomiyasu himself, he's someone who's more into dropping in as a right-sided centre-back instead of playing in midfield, although he has grown a fair bit in terms of playing in midfield. But I think Zinchenko is someone who's actually a very unique player for Arsenal as well. But I think if Arsenal are to do well, I think Zinchenko has to firstly be fit, and secondly have a good season, have a good rest of the season. So I think for me, Zinchenko was one of the best footballers in the Premier League and in Europe as well in terms of his footballing IQ, alongside Bernardo Silva.
Rahul, we've touched upon the injuries to key players like Zinchenko. We've also stated that he's probably one of Arsenal's best players at the moment. Do you see Arsenal truly challenging for the title if there are injuries to key players like Zinchenko or Thomas Partey? Is Jorginho the right replacement for, say, a Thomas Partey? Is he a player at the same level? Say, for example, a Bukayo Saka gets injured. Do we have people to come in and play the same sort of role that Saka does for the side?
Well, obviously, if you look at the players individually themselves, so like if a player gets injured, it is not possible to get a like-for-like replacement for their particular player, because every player has his own pros and cons, his own traits and skill set. So let's say as you first touched upon Zinchenko was injured towards the first half of the season for quite a bit, if I'm not wrong. Like he was out for a month or a month and a half, and we did the period quite well. And as we have seen Thomas Partey's injury recently as well, Jorginho has been a bit of a step in his players, be it the Manchester City game, which we lost 3-1, but he was one of the better players on the pitch for Arsenal, as well as against Aston Villa, where what he did, what was required of him. Moreover, then if you look at Jorginho himself, and his best years as a player, you would and that he had under Mauricio Sarri or Thomas Tuchel. Now, and if you look at Mikel Arteta, now the similarity between these three systems is that all these three systems are high pressing and compact structures. Like they're the fiercest of compact structures you will get. So now, when you have such a compact structure and you have your teammates in close proximity, then what happens is that for a player like Jorginho, that the limitation that he has, like his observed one work, it gets completely negated, which we saw against, let's say, a City or a Aston Villa. Like, although Arsenal conceded goals, but it was not something that was directly influenced by a Jorginho mistake or something that led from an a, a player that was Jorginho or the Granit Xhaka or the Granit Xhaka involved with. Because this is the thing, people nowadays are really give a lot of emphasis on the individual player themselves, whereas if you look at the highly successful teams, all these teams have a clear identity and a clear structure in place. But players can come in and move out of the system, and there might be a few tweaks in between the structures, but the ideal principle remains the same. So this is the same thing with Arsenal, and let's say if let's and like Kaustubh Pandey touched on that Kieran Tierney does not have the same skill set as Jorginho, as Zinchenko. But where I would like to differ is that although the Kieran Tierney is more of a traditional left back, now since Jorginho is plays the inverted fullback role excellently. What has happened is that the likes of Granit Xhaka and Martinelli have really suffered because of this. Because if you look at our right hand side, Ben White is both inverting and also overlapping down the right hand side. So the opposition team are not able to pick out what Bukayo Saka is going to do. Hence he has continued to be effective down the right hand channel, both him and Ben White, which has not been the case with the left hand side recently. Although the absence of Gabriel Jesus has also played a part, which fortunately he will be back, I think, before the Fulham game next month. So that's a plus. Emil Smith Rowe is also back. So if you look at those things, like Arsenal have more of their star players coming back into the team. So as far as the title charge is concerned, so as an Arsenal fan, I am more confident now than I was ever before, because having played City without some of our key players, then having having played most of the teams in the league, it feels like we are ready, and we can keep off City and United and take this the title after 20 years.
So we've spoken about injuries and how Arsenal probably don't have the replacements that they need to go long in the season in case Partey or Zinchenko gets injured. On the other hand, you have Manchester City, who have just this crazy squad, like for like replacements. But there is a slight issue with Manchester City, isn't there, Nihal? We have a bit of a fullback conundrum at City. Would you like to just share your opinion on it and just tell us what you're feeling and what you think City should do going ahead in the season?
Right. I feel like this left back situation has been a problem for a number of years. It started with Benjamin Mendy when he came, and then he had to leave the team for whatever reason. And then we had Zinchenko, who isn't a natural born left back, and he plays a different position for Ukraine. And then Guardiola, with his expertise, he was able to somehow make it work with the Manchester City squad. And then we had João Cancelo, who is a natural right back. And then he saw qualities in him that he could basically adapt to and bring him as a left back as well. So I feel like this has been an issue, and I genuinely don't know how this would be sorted out. It would ideally require a proper left back. And then this season we signed Sergio Gomez, who has been very, very poor whenever he's played for us. I think he's just had one good performance, and like the other performances haven't been as convincing as any of these other players who have played in their not so favorable positions. Zinchenko, Cancelo, all of them. Like, they've all done a good job of playing as a left back or whatever position they've been asked to play, according to Guardiola. So this has been an issue, but what I did see, a diamond in the rough, you could call it, is Nathan Ake, who is doing really well at the moment. He started the season extremely strong, and although he plays as LCB, but like Guardiola has found a way to play him at left back, and he's doing a brilliant job, an absolutely brilliant job. I think I've been most impressed by him across all the defenders in this Manchester City squad. Of course, there have been a lot of injuries and a lot of players coming and going, Cancelo leaving, all of that has happened. But Ake has been that one consistent performer for Manchester City. And does that solve our problems? Probably not, in my opinion. But for the time being, does it really help us progress through this season and maybe have a successful season while being in the setup? Perhaps. Like I would hope for that. And Ake for me has been the most reliable player. Maybe Pep can play both Laporte and Ake together, and it still wouldn't make a difference. I feel like Ake did so well against Arsenal in the last 2 games we played them this season. Bukayo Saka barely saw any movement whatsoever off the ball, and even on the ball, like Ake didn't give Saka as much space whatsoever to create as many chances as he would in like any of the other games. So I feel like Ake has done really well, and we definitely need like a solution to this issue. But this is Manchester City. We've been in this position before, and we won titles despite having this particular issue. So if you ask me personally, can Manchester City still go on and win the title and other cups perhaps? I still feel like that is possible because we've done that before. So if there's anyone in the world I trust right now, and if someone comes and asks me, was Cancelo leaving, with the loan to Bayern Munich, Cancelo's loan to Bayern Munich, was that acceptable? I would say if Pep believes that's the right decision for the squad, for the mentality of the squad, for the balance of the squad, and all those other things that he mentioned in the press conference, if all of those things are true as they are, then I definitely believe Pep more than anyone I could. So if he feels that with Ake playing as left back and maybe Bernardo Silva also assisting sometimes in particular games, if that is something that we see a lot more. We've only seen Bernardo Silva play as the left back in just the last couple of games. I don't know if this is something that Pep is going to keep doing. Actually, tonight when we play Leipzig will probably be the best opportunity to understand how Pep is planning on pursuing the season further. Like if Bernardo Silva will play a crucial role in retaining his spot as the left back for the squad. This is something that will be evident because in Champions League, Pep doesn't mess around as much. He plays the strongest squad as much as possible. And of course, there's always a bit of tinkering, but like I still feel like this will be his best squad. So tonight we might have the answer to all our questions. But so far, I feel like what we've done with Ake and Bernardo Silva isn't bad, like because we've had some great performances of late. I just hope that it continues. And like I said, this is Manchester City. You can never rule anything out with them.
Anshuman Nihal spoke about Nathan Ake, who has actually been quite impressive. Whenever I've seen him, at least, he was brilliant against Bukayo Saka and the Arsenal City FA Cup tie particularly. Do you think he's the solution to City's left back issue, or do you prefer somebody like a Rico Lewis playing or a Sergio Gomez playing out wide?
So, few things to this. When the season started, when you look the kind of formation Guardiola was using, it was at its attacking apex. In the other team's half, it was more akin to a 2-3-5, where the right side was completely left to Kevin De Bruyne, where the left side situation was being left to Joao Cancelo. And when I was looking at City playing at that time in that formation, I thought that as much as this is where were the position at its finest, and as much as there are a lot of players in this where you can just do a lot of rotations, there are some players that you cannot find a direct substitution for, and Joao Cancelo is one of them, Kevin De Bruyne is one of them, and Erling Haaland is one of them. Now, whether Erling Haaland is a kind of a solution Guardiola would want on his side is a different discussion, so we'll not get into that. But Joao Cancelo, I consider was one of the players that will become that is not exactly directly replaceable. So now we now know that he was let go for Bayern Munich because he was creating squad disharmony. So Guardiola decided that if it's to come down between having him and not having him at all, so we will have to let him go. And it's important to keep in mind that Joao Cancelo and Manchester City is a very unique marriage. And Joao Cancelo's success, a lot of the success he owes to Guardiola. Because before this time, he has spent playing right back for Benfica, for Valencia, for Inter, for Juve, and as a traditional right back whose primary responsibilities are defensive, he has not proved to be an exceptional fullback in a defensive role. The fact that Guardiola was able to put him in a system where his attacking qualities were more in full display, where the onus was more on the attacking side of things, is something that brought him a lot of success. And currently at the Julian Nagelsmann, things are quite better because he's also playing as a right wing back, where again the attacking side of things are more into the display than the defense side. And it's a bit of a switch that Bayern have had to make to do now that they've acquired him. Whether it will be considered a success or not depends entirely on whether Bayern go far into the Champions League and are able to retain the Bundesliga, which they are likely to do. But again, there's a title race going on here, so the jury is out on that one, and it's incredibly result-oriented. Now, when we come back to the for full-back situation, primarily the left-back situation that they have, I think we need to mention the part that saying that players play this one role and looking at the formations that we can find on the football apps, we need to first of all clear out the fact that all of these things are incredibly reductive and cannot possibly give you the full story of what goes on in a game. They are reductive by design, because just because they are reductive doesn't mean we have nothing, right? So I have in front of me the formation setup for Nottingham Forest and Man City, and Man City are presented as a team playing with the 3-2-4-1. Now, you can put that on a team sheet, but that does not mean that that's the shape that the team played with. Because Bernardo Silva's role, calling him a left back again, it's an oversimplification that borderlines on reduction, because that does not possibly explain what is the kind of role that he's doing. Bernardo Silva is an incredibly exceptionally intelligent footballer who is able to, I think, again, the kind of players Guardiola likes, because they can occupy multiple positions. They can move from one position to different positions seamlessly without having to positionally find themselves in a situation where they're not comfortable. So Bernardo Silva plays a very integral role in the build-up right now because Joao Cancelo has left. So the 2-3-5 that Guardiola was previously employing goes out the window, because that was a solution keeping Joao Cancelo in mind. So now he's not there, so the situation has changed. Now instead of Manchester City playing more of a 2-3-5 in their attacking apex, they are more of a 3-5. So yes, that they're more of a 3-5. And Bernardo Silva, where he comes into this, if Manchester City are playing out from the back and they are pegged back too deep into their own first third, then they don't need Bernardo Silva in the defense line. Bernardo Silva can present himself alongside Rodri as a midfielder, and Ederson can take the place of the left-sided centre-back, because when you are playing that far out the back, you can have him playing a bit away from his line. If you are playing against a team that is not pressing you incredibly high or not pressing you effectively, Ederson can come out into the even a bit more from his line and can build out from the back as a left-sided centre-back. In which situation, someone like Aymeric Laporte and Nathan Ake can move wider out in the left-back situation. Walker moves out in the right-back. Diaz comes into the right-sided centre-back, and Silva remains in the midfield position. Now, the benefit of having Silva in this midfield role is that when you are playing him alongside Rodri's responsibilities as carrying the ball and progressing the ball reduces significantly. Not that he's bad at it, but because Bernardo Silva is significantly better at it. He is an exceptional carrier of the ball, one of the very few very finest players in that role. He's not only a great ball carrier, his passing is exceptional, as is the case with most of the Man City players. And then the positional aspect, something that we brushed upon. So, and when you are playing against a side in which Ederson is not comfortable coming out from the back, in those situations, I've seen Bernardo Silva, he's moving into the defense line alongside Ruben Dias. Again, the likes of Ake and Laporte drift out on the left-right side. So he's out there, he's building up the play. The likes of Gundogan tape Bernardo Silva's plays alongside Rodri. The situation changes slightly. And then Bernardo Silva can pass the ball away to someone and then again move up the pitch, or he can bring the ball up the pitch depending on how the opposition is presenting itself. So the kind of role that Bernardo Silva is playing in that role alongside Rodri, saying that he's playing as a left back is incredibly reductive, and that is something that needs to be addressed. We have to call him a left back because at the end of the day, these positional denominations are reductive by design. Because right now, even if I were to take Manchester United example, the role that Wout Weghorst is playing, people are calling him a number 10. And when I hear that, it makes me squirm, because technically people are not entirely wrong. He is occupying the spaces you would expect a traditional number 10 to occupy, but he is not doing the work that a traditional number 10 would do. So both of those things are true at the same time. So there is a lot of reduction by design in how we refer to these players by the virtue of their positions, and it is incumbent upon us to dive deeper into this and explain that the roles that they're doing are much more complex and require much more than just being a defensive left back, which is what Bernardo Silva is. Because when City are on a roll, this Bernardo Silva is not playing as a defensive midfielder or a defensive player. He's progressing up the pitch and doing the interpositional changes alongside Gundogan and Grealish out on the left hand side, and he can just as well do that job on the right hand side, and he can occupy play as a false nine or a non-traditional centre forward as he has done in the past. So that is his speciality. That this is one of those players that can occupy multiple positions on the pitch. So coming back to Nathan Ake, which is an important point, because Nihal pointed out Sergio Gomez, and he has not been particularly great this season, which is something I can understand. But it's important to keep in mind that last season Nathan Ake was not being considered exceptionally great as well, because he came from Bournemouth, so immediately players were like, okay, he's only here to play as a second fiddle. And this season as well, people have same kind of questions about Calvin Phillips, insofar as whether he can play in any kind of role outside Leeds, where he was incredibly successful under Bielsa. He can play, but just because he hasn't been able to doesn't immediately make him a bad player. So hold on to the players. We are praising Ake this season, rightfully so, because he has been quite great in whatever systems Guardiola has used. In the first half of the season, where Cancelo was involved, then again he was playing more of a central defender role. There were situations in which he was also playing one of those roles where he's starting out on the left back and then drifting into midfield, the kind of role you expect Zinchenko to do, or what Zinchenko is doing at Arsenal even right now. But Ake is a good player. He came through the Chelsea academy. He has that in him, and that is one of the reasons why he has been acquired by City, because he is again a technically good player. Might not be the best in their field, but he is incredibly good. And now that he has settled in, he is nearly here for 2 seasons now. He has got his 2 feet in the ground. He is performing accordingly. And the likes of Calvin Phillips and Sergio Gomez, who are not being regarded as important players this season, they might come good next season. We don't know. So important to keep in mind that all players are different players and grow in their own pace. Some take a lot of time, some don't. And look, Ake deserves a lot of credit because of the way City are playing this season, because it's been quite challenging for them. Again, having a central focal point in Erling Haaland up front, which is quite a challenge for Guardiola in its own way. So the way that Ake has been incorporated into the team and the way he has taken up to that challenge is quite an interesting one. And yes, all credit to him for the way that he has been playing whatever positions he's been asked to play.
All right, then Kaustubh, if City do find not a solution per se, or if they figure out their fullback situation, and if things go well from here, do you see them beating Arsenal to the title, or do you think it'll probably go towards the to the back end of the season and it'll probably go to the last day or something like that? Or do you see City really running away with this?
I think one problem about City this season, I mean, specifically the season that goes unnoticed, is the fact that, I mean, it's similar to the issue that Argentina faced during the World Cup in their first 3 games or maybe 4 games. And after that, they sort of rediscovered that verb about them and then went on to the World Cup, is that they are very much on the ball. I mean, by on the ball, I mean, they have too many players who want to be on the ball instead of making those off the ball runs. I mean, Haaland is one who's obviously more into making those runs in behind it. Get at the end of those balls. But I think the fact that Raheem Sterling moved on, and I think Raheem Sterling is one of the most essentially misprofiled players. So let's say, I mean, going by social media and the way social media works, he's a very disrespected player as well, because I think he was
if you look at how he was at City, he came up with these massive moments, be it in terms of goals on the way he created chances of broke opposition lines. I think, and he was primarily the player who used to make those off the ball runs as well. I mean, he was someone who missed chances, obviously, but I mean that's a different criticism, also completely different criticism altogether. But he added this net positive, which I don't think at this point anybody player in the City squad has. Which I mean, I'm a massive Jack Grealish fan, but I think so far he's not been the sort of player that Raheem Sterling used to be. Riyad Mahrez, again, a game changer for Man City. He's been, if not for him, City wouldn't have won the league about 2 or 3 seasons ago. And I think there's this, I mean, Julian Alvarez is obviously there, whose inclusion, I think, sort of changed the way Argentina were playing as well. Apart from the fact that their shape also changed a fair bit in terms of how Enzo Fernandez sort of dropped deeper to complement possession. But I think that's why I think Julian Alvarez's inclusion in the second half of the season is going to be massive, because I think he's someone who offers something that, especially if he plays wide, which he can, as we've seen in his previous in Red River. We've seen that he makes these off-the-ball runs with drag defenses, whereas City are currently someone who are very much on the ball. And I think it's a sort of a discourse which I think going on social media as well, and it's a problem for Chelsea as well, I think, who are very on the ball, whereas they don't have enough runners off the ball apart from maybe one player. And if your striker is making those runs, that's largely normal. And especially if you have someone like Kevin De Bruyne who can play those passes in, it's something like that is bound to happen, where Kevin De Bruyne will play that pass and Erling Haaland will make a brilliant run in behind the opposition back line and pick those passes. But I think City lack that unpredictability at this point, which they had for the last 5 or 6 seasons, ever since Raheem Sterling became this brilliant footballer who could do a lot of things which a lot of City players can't do at this point. And I think the fact that Chelsea are not using him as much just pains me a little bit, because he's someone who can fix their issues a fair bit, whereas Chelsea are playing football. I mean, brilliant footballers, brilliant technicians who are really good on the ball when it comes to taking players on, beat them and go past them and create those chances in the final third. I think Sterling is someone who offers Chelsea as well a very new dimension. And I think that's what I think City will miss. And I think unless Julian Alvarez becomes a major part of the team, because he offers something close to what Sterling used to offer. I mean, all the City players in that squad are brilliant players, and Pep Guardiola, I think, is a massive brilliant when it comes to finding solutions for the right sort of problems on the pitch, and he's really good at identifying the right problem on the pitch and coming up with solutions for them. I mean, those specific solutions which Mikel Arteta has all obviously learned a fair bit from, and Erik ten Hag, who's another one who has worked at Pep Guardiola at Bayern Munich. They are very good at finding these issues. But I think if you look at Arsenal, I mean, when it comes to Arsenal and the way they function out wide, they have a sort of a variety in terms of playing out wide, because it's signing Leandro Trossard is a massive move, because he offers something that Gabriel Martinelli doesn't quite offer. I mean, Martinelli's goals have been drying up a favorite, and he's been making an impact off the bench more often. But I think while he's more of a runner in behind, when it comes to Martinelli, Trossard is someone who holds the ball up in the final third as well, which is something that, even though I think Martinelli does that job a fair bit, but I think Trossard comes from that sort of background where he can hold the ball up in the final third and set others through. So I think Arsenal have that sort of profile in the team, but they have this variety out wide. I think I was about to point out Napoli as well, who we know that the front two of Victor Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia, that they are players who are excellent individually, but Napoli also have that sort of versatility in terms of profile, where they've got having Lozano on the right, who's really good at setting defenses and making those runs past the fullback and putting that cross in there. But they've also got Matteo Politano on that very right side who comes inside. So I think that's something which can hamper City's chances unless Julian Alvarez plays more often, which I think he will, because as I said, Guardiola is someone who identifies those issues a fair bit, and we've seen that and I think Joao Cancelo was also pretty decent at this thing, where he made those runs, and since he was
a right-footed left fullback who could stretch that defense and make sure that he creates those spaces for his midfield players to make those runs in. Because since he's dragging the opposition defense wide, it's only natural that the opposition will shift to that side and City will be able to isolate the other side. So I think that's what City are missing with the departures of Sterling and Cancelo. And I think unless Julian Alvarez plays more often, which he can, as I said, I think City might have those issues in the next part of the season.
But Cosme, if just to add to what you said, if Grealish and Mahrez are preferred, do you see City winning this title?
I think it probably comes down to the 26th of April, if anything. Because I think City are extremely notorious in not losing games towards the end of the season. And even if the gap at that point is about 3 points, and City, as I said, they're very not notorious for not losing games at that point. And Pep Guardiola is someone, I mean, as I said, I've read a lot about how his approach is, how he thinks, and the way his brain functions before games. He'll know that if he loses that game, it's over for City. And he's going to make sure that game on the 26th of April, City don't lose, and I don't think they will. Because he's shown in that game at the Emirates that City were quite versatile in that game. They were not using their using their plan A. It was pretty much a victory which came out of using their plan B, which is what Arteta is extremely good at. We've seen that with what he did with winning the FA Cup in his first season. So I think it comes down to that game. And I think purely for that game, I think the setup of having Grealish wide and Mahrez on the right works fine, because I again expect them to go with the plan B, even though they're playing at home. But again, as I said, it's all about Julian Alvarez and whether he plays or not. But 26th of April, that's the game that I'm really looking forward to, because I think that decides where the season's going. As hard, Pep Guardiola hates losing those games at the end of the season. I mean, Guardiola is someone who's very much a believer in the fact that you can lose games early on in the season. It's fine. If you are in the race, you can catch up. It's not like if you are, it's not like saying that if you're 9th in the table or something after 10 games, you can still win the league. All he wants to do at that point, 10 games in, is stay within the top 6 or top 7. Even if you're 7th, you have a chance. We've seen that when United under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer were top of the league in January or something, City were 2nd. That was the season when City were actually 5th or 6th at one point. But they recovered and they won the league with a rather comfortable margin as well. So I think the way Pep handles that game is going to be really important, and obviously Julian Alvarez.
Rahul, are we sleeping on Manchester United? I've had a lot of Manchester United fans talk to me after every Arsenal game and every Arsenal loss or draw, stating that if we win this week, we are so and so points behind you, and we're right about that.
Well, exactly. Like, kudos to them. Like, they have been playing really well over the past years since the Premier season started. Season forced the World Cup, and Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes both have been, the fire for them, and especially if you look at them, like, there's a real, you can see a great and determination with these, current bunch, and they're really high on confidence, and the best compliment that I could give to Erik is that within the first season he has been able to turn Old Trafford into for fortress, which wasn't the case in the past 1 or 2 seasons. United were very good away from home, but they were never good at Old Trafford over the past 2 or 3 seasons. So for Erik and Harp to both their putting the positive City, the commendable in my opinion, because see, when as a fan or as a fan for or as an opposite fan, when you get the feeling that whenever a team has a home game and you know that whatever happens, they are going to get 3 points. You know that this team is on it, and they are not a team that you should take lightly. So this is why I feel that United is someone that could, really spring a few surprises. However, like the only thing that I think can, restrict them is the lack of depth at certain position, as well as them being available in all four competition as we speak now. Although the, like the League Cup final we played in this weekend, but after that they still have the, the FA Cup and the Europa League, which they will, go deep, I guess, and based on that, like they don't have the, required squad depth, to continuously play a game every 3 to 4 days.
So, Nihan, have you had any Manchester United fans in your ears of late?
Yeah, a lot of them actually, but they haven't been talking to me particularly. They've been just like you posed the question to Rahul. It's exactly that situation where on common groups where I'm friends with both United and Arsenal fans and friends, they essentially have banter between them a lot more than they have with me. Of course, the banter was quite ridiculous when United won against City earlier in the season. And obviously the talking point was the Rashford goal and how the offside played such a crucial role in turning the entire momentum towards United. But apart from that, yeah, like I would say it hasn't been as bad, I would say, with Arsenal fans. They were a bit overconfident when we beat them in the cup game because they believed that they weren't playing their strongest 11. But then when we recently played at the Emirates, they did play their strongest 11 and City played, I would say, somewhat their weakened side because we didn't have the likes of João Cancelo, who have been so important, like we've discussed so far in the podcast, not just this season, even last season. So, but like credit to Pep in the way he's handled the team, especially after his departure, building back that momentum, building back that that entire bond between the squad as well. So there have been Arsenal fans who of course, like said a lot of stuff, but like nothing that has bothered me so far because we still have 15 more games to go. It's still a long season to go, and there are lots of crucial games, and a lot of teams are picking up their form as well. You have the likes of Everton who are now gaining some sort of momentum, I would say. And then you have United, of course, that Arsenal will face at some point in the season. So you have very, very good teams that have grown in confidence across the entire season because of the changes that have taken place. And I feel like we're underestimating some of the opponents who weren't as good in the first half of the season, but in the second half of the season, we'll see that they will be much better, much more balanced and much stronger to face both City and Arsenal in that sense. So, yeah.
Ashwa, we'll come to you for the final say. We've seen that Arsenal and City are both capable of dropping points. United are picking up momentum, coming off of, I would say, a rather decent win against Leicester City. Do you see United causing these two sides any troubles at all?
Well, given that where they are in the table, it would be foolish of me to say no. That because they're just 5 points behind Arsenal despite having played a game more. So saying that Manchester United aren't in the title race is like statistically not true. So I can't really say that they are. As far as I'm concerned, they aren't. But that says more about me than about the club and this current situation they're in. And yes, look, I always say this when we are talking about predictions. It's a fool's game and we never really know what's going to happen. For all we know that Tottenham could win the league. So it's not going to happen again. But yeah, so we can only go on the precedents that we have seen in the past, which we have seen that Man City, they have that, like Kaustubh pointed out, they have a tendency to go on mad runs come the end of the season and just not drop points at all. So that they still, sadly, they are the ones that I'm looking at with fear and thinking that they might just end up winning the whole thing again. I hope that it doesn't happen, and I hope that Arsenal take it. But yeah, Man United, a lot of good things have happened this season, and Ten Hag deserves a lot of credit. I'm really been impressed by the way he has gone about working with things that are some of the things that he has had to deal with. Quite a lot of things on the pitch that are not like in his control. He's having to work with a defensive midfielder that he would not have bought, that even United won't have bought if we hadn't lost to Brentford and Brighton in the first two games the way we did.
and a goalkeeper that is out of his time by roughly 5 years, a right back that apart from Diogo Dalot, Aaron Wan-Bissaka cannot grab a ball, and he's just not the kind of player that Erik Ten Hag would want to play with, but he's making do. He's reducing the kind of role that he's reducing the kind of complexities you would want the Wan-Bissaka to not have. He's simplifying the game for the players he knows are not going to take nicely to incredibly complex roles. So his coaching is a lot instructional. The work that he has done with Rashford, especially, I would say the work that Benny McCarthy has done with Rashford, I'm at a loss because that's a whole different thing. So I won't go into it right now. It's emphatic. It's fantastic. But yeah, all in all, a lot of good things happening at Manchester United on the pitch. Every time I watch them, I like to see at least what on a tactical level what so the Ten Hag is trying to do this week in this game. So it's been quite interesting. It's been quite impressive on his part, and I can only just wait for the next game and see what new thing he has in store for us. So yeah, United are mathematically in the title race. Highly unlikely for them to win it, but you never know. You just never know. And he also recently had dinner with Sir Alex, so he might have gotten a few pointers from there as to what to do in these kind of situations when teams are way far ahead and you have absolutely no say in the title race and then to go on and win it. So yeah, let's see what happens. That's all we can say.
Yeah, Anshuman, you summed it up perfectly there. You never know. Anybody could win it. Not anybody, but guys around the top 4 or top 3 places. But yeah, I hope we're back for another chat around Arsenal, Manchester United and Manchester City, the title race. Soon, probably around the 30-35 game mark, and we can probably discuss everything that's happened up until then and what could possibly happen towards the end of the season. Thank you so much, guys, for joining in. Rahul, Anshuman, Nihal, Kaustubh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.